Hi everyone, welcome back to Animals with Nianne. Today we're going to dive into the icy and cold world of one of the most fascinating birds, the emperor penguins. Recently I watched Secrets of Penguins, which is a new series made by the filmmaker Bertie Gregory.
I spent my entire life trying to sneak up on shy animals. These penguins are definitely different.
His breathtaking footage and storytelling reignited my fascination with these beautiful animals. I couldn't stop thinking about how emperor penguins live in such harsh conditions, how they raise their chicks, and just the unique way of living they have. So today I wanted to take you along with the life of emperor penguins and tell you more about them. From exploring their behaviour to the challenges they face, how they raise their chicks, and the secrets that make them the true survivors of the Antarctic. So let's get started. The emperor penguin is the heaviest and tallest of all penguins. Adults can grow up to 1 meter and 20 centimeters and weigh about 20 to 40 kilograms, depending on their season. Their bodies are made for cold. They have a very thick layer of fat which can be up to 3 centimeters. And this fat helps them insulate against the cold temperatures that can fall below minus 50 degrees. On top of that, they have 4 layers of feathers that trap heat and keep their skin dry. This multi-layered feather system includes dense outer contour feathers and downy feathers underneath. Their wings have evolved in flipper-like structures, allowing them to swing gracefully through the water. They can reach speeds of 9 kilometers per hour underwater thanks to their streamlined bodies and powerful flippers. So, as I've mentioned before, they live in the Antarctic and can only be found in the Antarctic. Unlike most birds, they don't nest on land. Instead, they rely on vast, thick sea ice. That's where they breed and raise their chicks. These breeding colonies can be found up to 100 kilometers away from the ocean. That means adults must make long and exhausting journeys between sea and their chicks during the harsh Antarctic winter, when winds can exceed 200 kilometers per hour and temperatures can drop dramatically. Emperor penguins are social animals, forming breeding colonies that can reach up from 100 to over 20,000 individuals. And one of their most iconic behavior is huddling. During the coldest periods, packed tightly together in large groups, rotating positions so each penguin can stand in the middle and be warm. Scientists call this a form of cooperative thermoregulation, a survival tactic based on teamwork. They also use complex vocalizations to identify their mates and their chick. Each penguin has their own unique frequency pattern that helps them find each other in the big, noisy colony. The reproduction of emperor penguins is timed with the harshest season of all, the Antarctic winter. This may seem counterintuitive, but the time ensures that the chicks are old enough when summer comes and conditions improve. Emperor penguins are seasonally monogamous, which means they only have one partner per breeding season. They don't necessarily reunite with the partners year after year. Courtships begin around March or April, when the penguins return to the traditional breeding colonies on the sea ice. Males perform vocal displays and bowing rituals to attract females, using a unique call that can be heard over the noise of the colony. In May or June, after mating, the female lays one single egg. She carefully transfers this egg to the male, who balances it on top of its feet and covers it with a feathered skin fold known as a brood pouch. This pouch keeps the eggs warm and off of the ice, which is very important for the survival of the chick. While the female returns to the sea to eat and replenish her energy storage, the males enter a long fasting period, which can be up to 150 days. And this fasting period includes the courtship, the mating, incubation, and early chick care. He will remain in the breeding colony for up to 64 days in total darkness. If the female returns on time, she can feed the chick, which is then newly hatched from the egg, and the male feeds it with partially digested food. However, if the female is delayed and the chick needs food, the father is able to also feed the chick using like a sort of crop milk that comes from his esophagus, his throat. However, this is like the last solution to feed the chick. And it's also a very rare ability amongst birds. Most birds don't do this. And also once the female returns, the parents will alternate the chick care duties and the foraging trips at sea. The chick remains on the parents' feet for warmth during their early life. By July or August, chicks are large enough to join communal groups of young penguins, while both parents forage. By December or early January, when the Antarctic summer is full in spring, the chicks lose their juvenile feathers and start heading out to the sea. At this point, they're completely independent and they start their life on their own. In wild, emperor penguins can live up from 15 to 20 years old, although some individuals may reach up ages of 25 under ideal conditions. However, survival rates for chicks are very low. It is estimated that only half of the chicks will survive their first year. Once they reach adulthood, their survival rate significantly increases. Emperor penguins usually reach sexual maturity between 4 to 6 years old. However, 4 is quite young. Most common is 5 years old. And the thing is, when they start younger, their breeding success is lower when they're a bit older. It's just that the older you get, the more experience you have and the more likely you'll have a successful breeding season. And before they turn 4, 5, 6, when they start breeding, they live their lives at sea, just foraging, eating, hunting, growing up even more and learning the ways of sea and the Antarctic. Emperor penguins primarily feed on the Antarctic silverfish, squid and krill. They're experts at diving and they're capable of reaching depths of 15 meters deep and staying submerged for over 20 minutes. The IUCN classifies emperor penguins as near threatened. However, many scientists argue that this status underrepresents the urgency of their situation. The primary and the most pressing threat against emperor penguins is the climate change, specifically the loss of sea ice. Emperor penguins rely on sea ice for breeding, for molting. That's when they're replacing their feathers. This process can take about a month time and they need to be on land because they are vulnerable to the cold water. Because the new feathers aren't waterproof yet. And they need sea ice for foraging. Sea ice supports the Antarctic food web, including krill, a keystone species the emperor penguins and other marine animals depend on. As global temperature rises, the Antarctic sea ice is melting earlier and forming later, reducing the available time and space for successful breeding. In some regions, entire colonies have experienced breeding failures due to the early breakup of sea ice before chicks were ready to fledge. A 2020 study published in the Global Change Biology projected that under high emission scenarios, more than 80% of emperor penguins could become quasi-extinct by 21,000, meaning they would no longer produce enough offspring to sustain their populations. Other significant threats include overfishing due to industrial fishing operations. They're removing vast quantities of krill and fish, disrupting the food web in the Antarctic and making it much harder for penguins to find enough to eat. Another threat they face is pollution. Emperor penguins are increasingly exposed to heavy metals, chemical pollutants, microplastics and so on that accumulate in the sea and in the Antarctic ecosystem. Also, occasional oil spills, although rarer in the Antarctic, it can have a negative impact on the emperor penguin. And another threat to the emperor penguins is human disturbances. Although they live so remote, emperor penguin colonies are sometimes disturbed by researchers, drone surveys and tourism, especially in the more accessible regions. Even minimal disturbance during breeding season can lead to egg abandonment or chick mortality. And another thing that I found was that the US Fish and Wildlife Service listed the emperor penguins as threatened under the Endangered Species Act in 2022, citing that climate change as a primary risk to the species' long-term survival. If you want emperor penguins to thrive in the future, global climate action, particularly reducing greenhouse gas emissions, is absolutely essential. Thankfully, there are several organizations that protect emperor penguins. These organizations are WWF. They are advocating for the creation of new marine protected areas, in the Southern Ocean. The second organization is BirdLife International. They monitor populations and support sustainable fishing practices. And last but not least, I wrote down the Antarctic and Southern Ocean Coalition. They campaign for climate action and better policy protections. And of course, documentaries like Secrets of Penguins help raise awareness as well and inspire global audiences. The emperor penguin is more than just an iconic Antarctic bird. It's a species deeply tied with the health of the ecosystem, and right now that ecosystem is changing fast. If you want to help protect emperor penguins, the biggest impact comes from supporting climate action. That can mean reducing your own carbon footprint, supporting science-based climate policies, or donating to organizations like the ones I've mentioned that are working to protect the Antarctic ecosystems. If this video taught you something new, feel free to like, subscribe, or share with other people who are interested in wildlife. And in the comments I would love to hear what facts surprise you the most about the emperor penguin. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time on Animals with Nianne.